Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to English Story Time with Mark. I'm Mark. Today we have a special treat because we have a classic horror story called The Monkey's Paw. This story has been written and rewritten many times. It's a very well-known folk tale, I guess you'd call it. And it's based on the idea, there's an expression in English, be careful what you wish for. And you'll see at the end of the story what we mean by that. So let's jump into this. The Monkey's Paw. The wind howled outside as rain lashed against the windows of the small, cozy house. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, casting flickering shadows across the walls. Mr. White sat across from his son Herbert, playing chess. Mrs. White, knitting by the fire, occasionally glanced at them with amusement. "You're making a mistake," Herbert said, grinning. "I'm going to win." "Nonsense," Mr. White replied, moving his piece. "Check." Herbert laughed. "You just made it easier for me." He moved his knight. "Checkmate." Mr. White groaned and leaned back in his chair. "Well, I suppose that's what I get for taking advice from you." At that moment, they heard a knock at the door. Mr. White stood and opened it. A tall, heavy-set man in a military coat stood there, shaking the rain from his hat. "Sergeant Major Morris," Mr. White exclaimed. "Come in, come in." The man stepped inside, stamping his boots on the rug. "Nasty weather," he said. Mrs. White smiled. "Take off your coat and warm yourself by the fire." Morris settled into a chair and accepted a glass of whiskey. The three Whites listened eagerly as he shared stories of his travels in India. He spoke of strange places, exotic animals, and mysterious traditions. "And did you bring anything back with you?" Herbert asked, leaning forward. The sergeant major hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I did," he said. "Something unusual." He pulled out a small, shriveled object and placed it on the table. Mrs. White wrinkled her nose. "What is it?" "A monkey's paw," Morris said gravely. Herbert laughed. "Doesn't look like much." Mr. White picked it up carefully. The paw was dry and leathery. Its fingers curled slightly. "What's special about it?" Morris took a deep breath. "It's cursed. An old faker, a holy man, put a spell on it. He wanted to teach people a lesson, that fate should not be changed. The paw grants 3 wishes to 3 different people." Mrs. White chuckled. "Sounds like a fairy tale." Morris's face darkened. "It's real. I was the second person to own it. I don't know what the first man wished for, but I know his last wish was for death." The room fell silent. "And you?" Mr. White asked. "What did you wish for?" Morris stared into the fire. "Let's just say I got what I asked for, but not how I expected." Herbert scoffed. "Come on, it's just a bit of superstition." Morris shook his head. "If you use it, be careful what you wish for." He picked up the paw and threw it into the fire. Mr. White gasped and quickly pulled it out. "If you don't want it, I'll take it." Morris sighed. "I warn you, destroy it." But Mr. White only nodded and slipped the paw into his pocket. I don't think that was a very good idea. That night, after Morris had left, the Whites sat around the fire. "So," Herbert said, grinning, "are you going to make a wish?" Mr. White hesitated. "I don't know. What should we wish for?" Mrs. White laughed. "Something sensible, like money." Herbert clapped his hands. "Yes, wish for 200 pounds. That would pay off the house." Mr. White chuckled, then held up the paw. "All right, I wish for 200 pounds. He closed his eyes and squeezed the paw. The room fell silent. The fire flickered. A gust of wind rattled the window. Well, Herbert said, stretching, I suppose we'll wake up rich. They all laughed and went to bed. Little did they know. The next morning, the Whites went about their day as usual. Mr. White sat by the window, staring out at the road, waiting for something, anything, to happen. By noon, Herbert had left for work at the factory, and Mrs. White was tidying up. Mr. White sighed. Seems the paw is just an old story. Mrs. White patted his shoulder. At least we didn't waste money on it. Then, in the afternoon, a knock came at the door. Mrs. White opened it. A man in a dark suit stood there, hat in his hand. His face was pale. Mrs. White? He asked softly. Yes, I'm from the factory. Mrs. White frowned. Has something happened? The man looked at Mr. White. May I come in? They led him to a chair. He hesitated, then cleared his throat. I'm terribly sorry. There was an accident at the factory. Your son, Herbert. Mrs. White gripped the edge of the table. What about him? He got caught in the machinery. He didn't survive. Mrs. White let out a strangled cry. Mr. White turned pale. No, it can't be. The man looked down. The company takes no responsibility, but as a gesture, they'd like to give you compensation. He reached into his pocket. 200 pounds. The room spun. Mr. White barely heard the man leave. Mrs. White sobbed into her hands. Mr. White dropped the money onto the table, the exact amount they had wished for. The monkey's paw had granted their wish, but at a terrible price. Be careful what you wish for. Days passed. The house was silent, filled with grief. Then, late one night, Mrs. White suddenly sat up in bed. The paw, she whispered. Mr. White turned to her. What? The paw. We still have 2 wishes. We can bring him back. Mr. White's stomach turned. No, it's dangerous. Mrs. White grabbed his arm. We have to try. He hesitated, then slowly took the paw from the dresser. Hands shaking, he whispered, I wish for my son to come back to life. The wind howled. The house groaned. Then, silence. They waited. Nothing happened. Mrs. White sobbed, It's useless. Then, a knock. They froze. Another knock. Mrs. White ran to the door. No, Mr. White shouted. He could hear the slow, dragging sound of footsteps outside. It's him, Mrs. White cried, struggling with the lock. Mr. White scrambled for the paw. Please, he whispered, I wish him dead again. The knocking stopped. Mrs. White flung open the door. Nothing. The wind rushed in, cold and empty. Mr. White fell to his knees, clutching the cursed paw. Outside, the road was dark and silent. The end. Be careful what you wish for, indeed. That was The Monkey's Paw. I hope you enjoyed it, and you will find time to read it yourself. Have a great day, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye for now.